really, because I'm not doing it. All right. I get to watch and learn for a change. We have a special guest who I'll introduce in a couple of minutes. Right. But first, I want to tell you what is happening over the next couple of weeks here for the Patchogue Arts Council. And of course, tonight we're seeing pre-Columbian Mexican art. And it doesn't even have his name on there. How come it doesn't have your name on there? I don't know, with Professor Germano. And he's going to come back next month. Oh, I am so excited. I'm on vacation, right? Next month. So pre-Columbian art from mostly Mexico today, and then, well, we'll call it post-conquest art from Mexico next week. And both of them, by the way, are in support of the exhibition that we have up here, right? So we're excited about that. And let's see, what else do we have? Tomorrow, we have a fun event planned. We have four satellite galleries, within a block or two of each other in the downtown area, the other side of Main Street. And will be having four exhibitions and four artist receptions tomorrow. So you can look around, you can take a little walk around and check them all out. So we have the same artist who is here is going to be doing one of those at SEPA, and we have another body of her work um, located there on North Ocean Avenue. Across the street, we have a abstract artist, Patrick Ayuvoli, and then on Main Street in the Patchogue Theater, City Lights with Catherine Mayer. And across the street at Toast, we have Raphael Algarin, who has got the mural on the library, the new mural on the side of the library, right, which you can see pictured here. And he has some of his work and some support of the mural will be on exhibit. So that's pretty exciting. That's all tomorrow, and it just doesn't end because on Saturday, listen, I sit there with my calendar going, what day is it? What day where do I have to go? On Saturday, I will be here and I will be in conversation with Colleen Z. Alder, and we will be talking about this work. But what I found very interesting is Professor Germano is already looking at them, say, oh, this symbol and that symbol, which is really exciting to me. So I'll get to delve deep into that. So on Saturday with the artist of these beautiful paintings. And along with that, we have two movies from, with the spirit of Mexico in them on January 26th. Frida will be showing next door, and the artist will be giving a tour of her work before that movie. And again on February 9th. Right. So when we have Pan's Labyrinth. So exciting stuff. Yeah, well, then we got it together for this show pretty impressively, right? And one of the things that we usually do on a Monday that's had to change because of the film is yoga. We do yoga in here, so might want to come back for that sometime. And we have a free concert and art workshop. This is kind of a young person's one, right? This is a young group of artists and musicians. So if you're feeling your oats, come back for this one. Okay, well, that's a lot happening within a couple of weeks here. So maybe I'll see you again. And now I would like to introduce our guest today, who's made my life so pleasant, Professor Tom Germano. Thomas Germano is a professor of art history and studio at Farmingdale State College, where he teaches, among other courses, a course in pre-Columbian art. So we're getting it today, right? Professor Germano is an exhibiting artist, published author, and frequent presenter of art lectures throughout the New York City and Long Island area. He holds an MFA in painting from Yale University and a BFA from Cornell. I need to talk to you about that, Cornell. Okay, concentrating in painting and minoring in art history. He is the recipient of two National Endowment for the Humanities Awards in 2011 and 14, the Edwin Palmer Award in Painting from the National Academy of Design in 2006, and IERX Award, you'll have to tell us about that, in 1989, 12 Professional Development Awards through SUNY, and the SUNY Chancellor's Award for Excellence in Creative Scholarship in 2017. Among his publications and lectures is a paper presented in 2019 titled Syncretism. How do I say that word? Syncretism, okay. In the Florentine Codex, which he will be explaining to us next month, right? Within the panel on 16th century Tenochtitlan at the College Art Association. Germano's paintings and drawings are in public and private collections throughout New York, the US, the UK, and Europe. He has exhibited his artwork frequently throughout the US and Europe, and he maintains an active studio practice in Long Island. On Long Island. In Long Island? Boy,
We live on.
right. Us Long Islanders, we have our unique way of looking at the world from our vantage point on this island, right? But that's enough, right? Because I'm really excited to present Professor Thomas Germano. Okay, so I close this.
Yes. And then we're gonna go to the other one.
Isabella's wonderful. We can't do anything without Isabella.
This one.
Okay. What happened?
I just have to go back. Okay, here it is.
This was supposed to be a seamless transition, but then again, I didn't know how to make it happen. Okay. So opening up, we're passing over. We're going to set this up so you can stand. You want to stand?
I'm just gonna make sure that they can.
Do you want me to do the button then?
I'll do it. Yeah, I'll come back and.
Okay, you'll.
I think I'm also on the camera in front of them.
Well, yeah, but we can face this. So if you're going to stand over here, we can make it face you wherever you're standing.
Okay, if you want to work it, I'll let you.
Okay. I know he's giving up a lot of his autonomy to me here.
Attractive, yeah.
I can do it. Okay, here we go. So you don't need to read notes or anything off of this, do you?
No.
Look at that.
May I recommend that you adjust the projector to see that it's going off on.
Oh, it's going off. How did that happen?
That was.
Got a keystones on.
Oh, boy. Everything gets more. Okay. Yeah, we want to try to close that top thing and see if we could do that. See, it's not open on here, so. Okay. And here, can we close the top four? Hit OK for the recording. Okay, I'm done. My job here is done. Nice. So while we're waiting for that, why don't you tell us about the course that you teach in? So we can check.
The course that I teach at Farmingdale State College is called Mesoamerican Art History, Art 303, and it goes from the Olmec all the way to the 21st century, looking at the art of ancient Mexico, but incorporating some Guatemalan, Belizean, Honduran, and just a little bit over the borders in each direction. I also spend the first night talking a little bit about the American Southwest, as I am a believer in the transasiatic migration theory, suggesting that a lot of the people in the Americas came across the Bering Strait shortly after the Ice Age. So that's my perspective. That could be debated, and I have a colleague at LIU for many years. She's since passed, but her theory is, and but some archaeology disputes that, but they definitely do not seem to have come from across the Atlantic, as some have also suggested, but I don't believe in that theory.
That's Cortez.
Cortez came across, yeah.
So,
Not the Olmecs.
so when they suggest that they did not come in that period of time post Ice Age, right? Or during the Ice Age because of the bridge, the land bridge, right? But they had to come at some, right?
Yeah.
Right, you know?
Yeah. There are some that believe that there was a sea crossing on the Pacific from some of the Southeast Pacific islands and across the Pacific into the west coast of South America and Mexico and the US.
A sea crossing. But then again, some of those islands didn't get populated until only 1,000 years ago,
Okay.
right? So it's hard to say, it's hard to imagine that they would have gotten to the coast of the Americas and not the islands in between. So,
True.
anyway, this is a debate.
Whichever theory you subscribe to, I can guarantee that there are waves, and it didn't all happen at once, but there are waves upon waves. In fact, the Aztec will be the last civilization before the conquest by Cortez and the Spanish, and they only were founded around 1350, so very late in terms of the last great empire in the Americas in Mexico. Are we ready?
I think I opened the pack one.
You didn't have this as your
I do. Yeah, I have.
Oh, you have your first slide too?
I used yours as the.
Now that's what
But I did incorporate that one
So
euro that was going on. Why sometimes. So I used your.
pardon the slight delay.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So not this one.
All right. If this can be done, I have confidence that Isabella is going to get it done. There
Thank
it
you.
is. That's it.
Yes. I'm beginning.
Okay.
And then I just have to screen share. Share. Okay. Then-
It's up.
Okay.
All right. So I think I'm on the camera on the Zoom and addressing the people here as well. So we've got two audiences. It's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate the PAC and John and Isabella for inviting me to present on Mesoamerican art, specifically the art of ancient Mexico. And the first image that you're seeing on the right is from Bonampak. Bonampak is in Chiapas, which is the southeasternmost part of Mexico, very close to the Guatemalan border, just across the Ucinta. And one of the paintings here has the word La Condam, which is the tribe of Indians who oversee that territory today, the La Condam Indians. They are not related to the people who made the paintings at Bonampak, but when I saw this, I was sure that I had just stumbled into what I refer to as the Sistine Chapel of Mesoamerican painting. These are some of the most extraordinary paintings in 3 successive temples high up on a mount, and they're in the Chiapas region, which has The coronation in the first temple. The second is a battle scene. And then on the opposite side, the presentation of the captives. And they get a little bit graphic in the presentation. There's heart extractions and cutting off fingertips and toes. But these are the presentation of the captives who are then rolled down the steps and meat tenderized and usually have the flesh removed and all sorts of unpleasant things. But on the top of the steps is the Ahau, or the king who has conquered his enemies and is now standing over the captives as an offering. This introduces us to one of three topics that we're going to see today. And almost across the board, exclusively, you can say Mesoamerican art represents three distinct topics. They are kings and rulers, including queens. Queens will have a very important role, as we'll see from Yaxchitlan, not from Sinapak. We see captives who are the unfortunate that have been taken as slaves and sacrificial victims, and it's really terrible. And the third category are the gods. So there's always exceptions to those rules, but I would tell you 95% of the artwork is one of those three: gods, kings, and captives, and that would occupy most Mesoamerican art, as we'll see throughout today. So this has two of those topics. There are captives and there are conquerors, kings. And this is from the Bonampak mural, as I mentioned. The blue is very important because blue in Western Europe and in Egypt and in Mesopotamia, it only came from one place in the world, the Hindu Kush Mountains of Afghanistan, where they mined the lapis lazuli. Now, this is not lapis lazuli because the people of the Americas had no contact with that part of the world. So the question remains, how did the Maya figure out this pigment 1,400 years ago? Well, it's a type of indigo mixed with polygorskerite, which is the clay silt from the embankments of the rivers. And they figured out a way to create their own blue. But otherwise, the ancient Egyptians from the time of Tutankhamun to the ancient Mesopotamians in the era of Ur and Sumer, they all got it from Afghanistan. And even the Renaissance artists in Italy would get their pigments from across the sea, which is how we get the word ultramare or ultramarine blue. So blue is a very distinct color that only came from Afghanistan until we come to Mesoamerica, and it was invented by the Maya around the 6th century in the Common Era. So we'll see a few more Maya blue pieces, but you can always spot a Maya work because they are the inventors and the users of this blue. And it'll be spread around after their invention, but not before about the 6th century. Next, please.
Okay.
So not going forward. Isabella.
Okay.
Here's Isabella.
Where is?
Sometimes the arrow on the bottom there. If you hit this with the mouse, go right down to there, that'll do it. But Isabella was going to tell you that.
I don't have well, I have my mouse here. I could use that too. Does that work?
Is that the second one? Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so we can't really talk about the Mesoamerican people or the indigenous Americans in what is now the United States without talking about corn or maize. And of course, there's a god for all things from rain to corn to thunder. And you pick a topic and there's a god in Mesoamerican world. But it starts with something of a wild shoot called teosinte. And teosinte was something that was engineered by the earliest Americans, the people who came to this continent, and they cross-pollinated the most successful corn kernels, the teosinte, and by cross-pollinating it, they came up with what we identify as a full ear of corn. But this is no accident. This is something that was intentionally done. And we refer to the Mesoamerican people and even the Plains Indians of what is now the United States of America as the people of corn, the children of corn. They have a reciprocal relationship. Corn does not grow without them, and they do not survive without corn. The Mesoamerican people didn't have wheat, which is the staple of the diet of most Europeans and Americans. That's how we make bread. But corn would be at the center of the diet of the people in the Americas, South America included, and it's the mashing of the corn into type of substance that they can roll it out and make everything from tamales to edible bread substitutes. But it's the center part of their diet. And it's something which we see not just a practical dietary importance, but it's represented in the artwork throughout, because the maize god provides the sustenance of food. Here we find a maize god from the Maya. This is just across the border in Honduras, in the city of Copan, and that site was archaeologically excavated by the Harvard University archaeologists. The maize god is always identifiable because of his headdress. The headdress looks a lot like the top of corn. All of these flowing greens and the type of white stuff that comes out of the top. We'll see it over here as well. But that's something that we'll find in the Copan piece on the far right, and these three little pieces that were just exhibited at the Metropolitan Museum of Art about 2 years ago. They're on little shafts, and then coming out of that opening is the maize god. So the maize god was seen as the deity that brought maize, but also seen as probably the most important of the gods of the Mesoamerican world. But it starts with Hyacinthe, which we'll see as a wild weed, and that's what it looks like, just single kernels of corn. And when we look at a large tablet of Maya glyphs today, when they're laid out, well, lo and behold, they're laid out a lot like the way ears of corn are laid out in rows and columns in these glyphs that each have their own individual box. So that's something that crosses over from the corn that they design into their graphic design when it comes to writing glyphs in either pen or sculpture. Next, please.
See if this will work now.
Okay, also a Maya piece, as we're staying with the Maya first, and the Maya are not the first civilization, but it was my gateway drug into Mesoamerican art, because I just thought that this was one of the most incredible civilizations that ever lived in this world, and they still live in this world. There's a thriving Maya community in Queens, not far from Kennedy Airport. There's also a Maya community in South California and Chicago. But this is one of the Maya plates. It's referred to as the resurrection plate. And here's a case of syncretism, where there's not only a Mesoamerican story of the birth of the maize god who's being resurrected annually, but it's a reference to a syncretism of Catholicism, where this is the core belief of Catholics and Christians throughout the world. They have this idea that Jesus Christ comes back from the dead. So through these syncretistic connections, the priests who came and after the conquest were able to use the stories of Mesoamerican iconography to easily start to convey the word of Christian beliefs in the 16th and 17th centuries. So the plate that you're looking at from the Boston Museum of Fine Arts, commonly referred to as the resurrection plate, it's not Jesus Christ, but it is the maize god. And notice his headdress, it has that floppy design that looks a lot like the maize god or the top of the ear of a corn. He's being told out of the crack of the cosmic tortoise. And this turtle, or tortoise as it's seen, represents the watery earth. Through that crack, he's summoned to life and helped along by his two sons. These are the hero twins, Hunapu and Xbalanque. I'll spell that for you later if you really would like to know, but these two hero twins are at the center of the core mythology of the Mesoamerican people. It's from a book called the Popol Vuh, or the story of the people of the corn. And these two hero twins are the sons of the maize god, but they're bringing their father back to life because he dies at the end of each year. When the harvest is cut down, they take the corn, they cut down the stalks in a type of slaughter, and then from the seeds, it comes back to life in the next growing season. So it is a form of a resurrection, and here he is coming back to life, aided by a little water, by one son, and the spotted son, who has the spots of a lip, Hunapu, is summoning the father from the earth. More twin story can be read in the Popol Vuh, but they have this incredible life. which is on par with some of the greatest stories from Western mythology. If you read the Olympian gods, they're pretty good, but the hero twins have a far more exciting background. They play a ball game against the gods of the underworld, and while they might have lost the game, being in the underworld, land of the dead, called Xibalba, they do bring their father back. So they have everlasting life as that great deed. The heroism is something far greater that lasts an eternity rather than just one short lifetime. So that's the story of the hero twins, and the hero twins are bringing their father, the maize god, back from the underworld through the crack in the cosmic tortoise. Around the edge of this plate, you'll see Maya glyphs. And what really fascinates me about the Maya is they developed a writing system. They probably incorporated a little bit of the technology from the Olmec, which we call the Epi-Olmec pre-Maya. The Maya are probably closer than many give credit to coming out of the Olmec civilization, but they did have a neighboring border, and they will share a lot in common, including some crossovers with the Maya counting system, which is a bar for 5 and a dot for 1. And they even had a symbol for the number 0, which the Western Europeans did not have, and also the number 20. The difference between the Maya counting system, which you don't see too many numbers here, you just see the dots for singles, but when there are dots and bars, a bar is 5 and a dot is 1. With this counting system, once you get up to 20, it rolls back over. Our counting system is based on 10. And the difference is, well, if you're counting and you're sitting, you got 10 fingers and 10 toes, and they use 20 and made it work so sophisticatedly that the Maya and the Zapotecs before them had charted out the movement of the stars and the planets, and they could tell you where Venus was going to be 500 years into the future. They understood eclipses and the movement of the planetary bodies and calendars going back over 1,800 years ago. So that's a testament to the scientific-minded Maya, who have a writing system and a counting system that was really a sophisticated set of rules. The glyphs, which are a little bit different than the Egyptian hieroglyphs, are completely unique to this culture. There are mostly silhouetted faces and forms and abstract designs, but this is what we call the codex style. And it gets that name because it's a dominant line against a simple background, like how a pen might draw something on a piece of paper. So that's the resurrection plate, and you might have noticed a hole in the center. So what's with that hole? Now, anybody who does gardening would probably have a hole so that you can drain the water out of the center. But according to most of the Maya specialists, they will tell you that that's a kill hole to release the energy of the spirit from this plate when it's no longer being used. Everything has a spiritual, natural form, so it's a kill hole to release the spirit when the plate is no longer being used. And this is in such excellent condition. A lot of these come to us by way of tombs that would have been undisturbed. Unfortunately, when tomb robbers get to them before archaeologists, there's no record of which tomb and how they were found. So that's always been a problem and continues to be a problem in the rainforest of the Petén jungle, which is where many of these Maya pieces come from. Next, please. Now, the mother civilization is called the Olmec, and the word Olmec comes from Olmia. That means rubber, and these are the rubber people. I spoke about the corn people. Sounds like a Flash Gordon episode. These are the people of the rubber because they had vulcanized rubber going back 3,000 years, and that's not something that was done until the 19th century with some of the car tire manufacturers to make a substantial material that you can run a car on or do other things with. Rubber was used for a number of things, from insulation to protecting one's house from getting leaks, or to protect one's feet from getting waterlogged. But most importantly, the rubber was manufactured into a ball, and it was used at the center of the ball game. The ball game was just as vital to the Mesoamerican people because it facsimilates the movement of the planetary bodies, the sun and the moon, which we're going to talk a lot more about today. But that movement, east and west of the ball game, facsimilates the east-west movement of the sun, rising in the east, setting in the west, and the ball game will be played in these wedge-shaped arenas that I'll show you exactly what they look like later. Before we get into ball courts, take a look at 3 works by the Olmec. The most important on the 2 uses a material that was the most precious material to the early Mesoamerican people. And when we think about the most expensive material, we think gold, maybe silver, maybe some precious mineral. Gold didn't come into Mexico or the Americas until about 1200, and it was brought by the Mixtec from the south, probably from South America, up into Mexico and beyond. So there is no gold traded as an expensive commodity. What was considered the most precious material is jade. Jade, shells, and feathers, and especially the quetzal feathers, which we'll associate with the headdress of Montezuma, which I'll include next month. So jade is the most precious material, and there are large jade deposits in Guatemala, and this would be found throughout the Maya and Olmec world. This is a jade carving of a crocodile, and you know that this is a really spectacular crocodile, not just some pond dweller, but this is a supernatural crocodile. And how do we know that? The flaming eyebrow. Flaming eyebrows give it a supernatural quality, and gods or deities with a flaming eyebrow suggests more than just a pond dweller, but a god, a deity of sorts. So that's something that identifies this, and these are inserts of shell to create those circular marks that are then surrounded by incisions into the jade. This is a figure who is in the process of transformation, and the Olmec, like many of the other Mesoamerican cultures after them, worshipped jaguars because jaguars were creatures of the night, and they also went into the caves. And there's this connection between the literal world of our existence and the place somewhere else beyond. So oftentimes the shaman would get into a trance state and would transform into jaguars. And by doing this, they would assume a certain position and move into this jaguar apparition in their face, sometimes wearing a mask, and then going into the cave and communing with the ancestors and the gods. This is a figure in the process of that transformation. In this case, we see a figure within serpent. And the serpent is also very important to Mesoamerican cultures because it's related to Quetzalcoatl, a creation god. And Quetzalcoatl is the god of creation, the feathered serpent, as he's referred to. But inside the body of that snake, we see a human form who takes on the apparition. It's a disguise. He's impersonating Quetzalcoatl, but he's inside the snake. And the snake is related to creation because what happens in the beginning of the spring when everything thaws out and just before the rainy season? Well, on Long Island, all the worms come out of the earth because they know they're going to get drenched and they can't stay down there, otherwise they'll drown. Snakes do the same thing in Mexico, and at the beginning of the growing season, right before the rains come, they all come out of the earth, and the ground is filled with snakes. So Quetzalcoatl is a very important snake god and related to creation. Next, please. In the American Museum of Natural History, right here in New York City, you can see this Kunstaxe, which is in the shape of a. There's a pointy blade on the bottom. You would hold it in the hand here. It's probably about 8.5 or 9 inches tall, and it's very thick. And somebody helped themselves to some of the jade in the back. Each owner would carve out a little bit, pocket that, just like ancients in the time of the Greeks and the Romans would carve a little bit of the silver off the edge of a round coin. Well, the same was going on with this jade piece, people taking off pieces from jade because it's very valuable. Now, the cool thing about this jade is that it's carved with the maw of the jaguar. The corners of the mouth go down, and this is a common feature in many of the Olmec carvings, and the hands are against the mid-torso, and it's holding an axe. So it's very meta. It's an axe that's representing a jaguar holding an axe. This is not an axe that you would use for splitting wood. This is a ceremonial axe used probably for heart extractions or other sacred ceremonies of that nature. But it is the face of a jaguar, and it is an axe holding figure carved out of jade. And this is probably one of the most beautiful Olmec pieces we have here in New York City at the Museum of American Natural History. Next, please. The Olmec also made some colossal heads, and the colossal heads, which are anywhere from 8 feet to 11 feet in height, are gargantuan heads. And if you recall back to what I said about the 3 most dominant subjects, this is not a captive. You wouldn't give such an honor to a captive. And this is not a god. So it must be a king. And the king has the headdress of a ball player. Kings played the ball game to please the gods. And after the ball games, there would be sacrifices. And the sacrifice, the blood, would be used to generate the cosmos to continue to fuel the movement of the sun and the moon. In the esteemed words of Carl Taube, who was one of the great Mesoamericanists who I studied with in Mexico and in the Mayab, Carl had once said, blood, human sacrifices, is the fuel that generates the cosmos. And through human sacrifice, it's necessary. So the ball game, suggested by the headdress on this king, is suggesting he's not just a royal, but he's also somebody who plays the game to please the gods. Okay, it's a colossal head from Veracruz, which is in the cradle of Mexico. And before long, a lot of the Olmec civilization will fizzle out, and many of their lands will then be dominated by the Maya, the Veracruzians, and the Aztecs from not too far away either. Next, please. On the left, we're seeing one example of a rain god, and really taking an abbreviated view of all of Mesoamerica, as this is a semester-long topic that we're kind of cramming into one presentation in an hour. We have rain gods. Just like the maize god can be found in each culture, the rain god might go by a different name, but there's a few overlays. He's known as Cosijo in the Zapotec, down in the south near Oaxaca. In the later Nahuatl language of the Aztecs, we refer to him as Tlaloc. And in the Maya, the guy on the upper right here, we refer to him as Cha'ak. So Cha'ak sounds like the thunderclap, right? Tlaloc, if you say it correctly, I might scare you guys, but it sounds like a thunderclap. And this is a little bit less thunderclap sounding, but look at the similarities. They all have goggle-shaped eyes, they all have fangs, and they all have a headdress that we associate with the rain god and the thunder and the lightning that comes from it. But just as important as the base god, the two are symbiotic. One doesn't exist without the other. So rain is necessary for the growing season. And this is a very revered god. So Cosijo in the south, Tlaloc in the Central Valley, Mexico, in both the Teotihuacano and Aztec languages, and in the Maya. Let's take a look at that figure on the upper right. This is from a folding codex, and there are only 4 codices that exist from the Maya, courtesy of some crazy Spanish priest who came over, Bishop Diego de Landa, who decided everything that was written was devil's work, and he had to burn it all. So only 4 survive that conflagration, and this one is one of the 4 that still exist, and it's a very good example of the Maya counting system. You'll see the 3 bars and 3 dots, which is the number 18, and there's a lot of counting because this is related to calendars and different growing seasons. But the coolest part of this Maya blue representation of the god of rain, and he's always blue because water is supposedly blue, you'll notice that he opens up his legs, and through that center opening in the gap between his two legs comes a torrent of rain falling down onto the earth. And that's what he's known for in the beginning of the raining seasons, which is anticipated when there's good rain. So that's one of the four existing books that were done by the ancient Maya that relate some of their science and technology, astronomy, and references to gods. This one has a lot of references to Tlaloc, the blue figure, and using that Maya blue that we mentioned earlier. Let's move on, please.
Just one question. Do we know what all of these images mean?
Oh, sure, yeah. So this is an incensaria for burning incense in that.
No, I mean in the codex, in the codex.
Oh, we do, yeah. So above the figure of Chak is a sky band, and that's a decorative border that represents the sky above. The counting system are dates and numbers for calendrical calendars. There's two calendars in the Mesoamerican system. The Maya had the 270 9-month calendar. They also had a 12-month calendar, solar calendar. So the dates are related to different growing seasons and times of the year for the calendar. And then we have the blue figure, which relates to Cha, the rain god, and when it rains and when it doesn't rain. So the barren season, you don't grow anything. That's what these pages mean. But then there are other pages that relate to the technology of wood carving. There's another book that deals with the technology of beekeeping, apiaries, and another one of sewing and hunting. So that's in the Codex Madrid. Okay, that's a ceramic piece on the bottom that was discovered in Tenochtitlan much, much later. The time difference between these three are centuries, with the one on the bottom right being just before the conquest. So the ball court, played in an east-west trajectory, looks to some people to be shaped like a pool. This happens to be the ball court from Monte Alban, which is in the south near Oaxaca. It's in the clouds, very, very high up in altitude, so high up that I'll guarantee you will not get a mosquito bite. The mosquitoes don't go up this high. And if you do go down, you take these little berries that grow on the bushes and you squeeze them and rub them on yourself, and that is an automatic repellent of mosquitoes. The Mesoamericans knew this 3,000 years ago. So in the recessed area, the pool area, it looks like the letter I. This comes across, this is the long playing court, and this comes across here. There have been deposits discovered by archaeologists in the center, usually sculptures and other objects, dedicatory objects, that were often found in a pool of mercury. Mercury, that's poisonous, but mercury was used sparingly and carefully, and it gave it a magnetic force to the center of the playing court. Oftentimes the side, not this one, but the side would have rings, and the idea for the ball game is not necessarily to get the ball through the ring, but to move it in an east-west trajectory, and there would be one team moving this way, the other team moving this way, and the game was decided with the proper goals scored and a time that the game would be played, and then sacrifices would be made. According to Joseph Campbell, the great mythologian we spoke about earlier, Joseph Campbell talked about how the winners would be sacrificed. And people thought, well, who would ever want to win? The idea was you would go out on the top of your game. After winning the ball game and giving something to your people, knowing that you just contributed to this growing season that was going to be successful because of the rains, this was a way to go out when you're performing at your top peak. So the winners, according to Joseph Campbell, were the sacrificial victims. The Maya vase that we see here shows the ball and the ball player. And the ball player has this big yoke around his center. If you tried to stop the ball with your hand or hit it with your head, like American soccer, you'd probably lose your hand and you'd definitely get a concussion that you might never wake up from. So you move the ball by sliding into it and then moving it with that big round yoke. And we do have quite a few yokes that are made out of stone, but I can't imagine those stones being supportable by the frail, wasted figures that they would go around. So it's more likely that those stone yokes were molds for some after victory celebratory medal that the athletes would wear. But that's a pretty big yoke, and it was probably more padding and less stone. And then in this Western Mesoamerican sculpture, this is from the Nayarit on the Occidental Western coast, you can actually see the game being played. The large ball in proportion to the figures who are sliding into it and moving it along with the yoke around their midsection. Spectators on the left and on the right, and it said that they would gamble on the games. And as the game proceeded, you'll notice that one team is trying to move it this way, the other team is trying to move the ball this way, but it's an analogy to the movement of the cosmic planets going around the Earth and the sun rising and setting on a daily basis. This is not only a ball player, but the ball player was the king. And here's another theory in support of Joseph Campbell's idea that the winners would be sacrificed. Kings played this game as they were pleasing the gods, and then the kings would designate surrogates to be sacrificed. So the king would sacrifice their captives from a neighboring tribe. That's my idea, and I'm sticking with it, but that supports the idea that the winners would choose the sacrifice. They would get to sacrifice who they please. Maya glyphs are on the top, and these are usually drinking glasses for the king for their favorite beverage. You know what that was, right?
Chocolate.
Foamy chocolate milk. Yeah. Not milk, but a frothy cocoa drink, like a milk chocolate shake.
Was it alcoholic?
Chocolate. They had other alcohol, but not in the chocolate. They didn't mix those. And the farmers of the chocolate were the monkeys. Now, how the monkeys farm chocolate? They would eat the chocolate buds off the tree and then run around the forest and defecating, they would plant the chocolate all over the forest. So that's how we have chocolate, cacao trees, courtesy of the monkeys who were rewarded for their help in growing cacao plants. Next, please. Okay, Chichen Itza has a number of late Maya sites, which we'll talk more about the Maya as we move on. But I show this pyramid on the right in a rather dramatic sunset as an example of the 5 cardinal points. The 5 cardinal points is what we call a quincunx. And the quincunx is like a 5 on the die with the center and the 4 corners. So we refer to those as the 5 cardinal directions. You might call them east, west, north, and south, and the center. But to the ancient Mesoamerican world, they all had a color coordination, which that painting references. And the color coordinations also relate to the colors of maize: black, yellow, white, and red. They also reference the center as this gateway to the center of the world and their place in the world. But the 4 cardinal directions will be sacred, and we'll see them in all of the pyramids, mostly 4-sided, and also in all of the designs of cities that have roadways called sakbes to the Maya that would come in 4 directions. Next, please. This is a good example of the map that Cortes was given after the conquest, and it represents Tenochtitlan with a city on the lake, and there are 4 cardinal directions that get into the center where the Templo Mayor, the main temple, was located, but there are 4 cardinal directions and axes that move into the city. You'll see a little bit later today, when we talk more about the Aztecs at the end, how there are 4 cardinal directions and a center. The center here represented by the face of the sun god. And here you'll see 4 cardinal directions that's separated by the X, which this artist references in the Codex Mendoza, the X on the frontispiece of that book. And in this Codex and Mixtec, a much later one than the Maya, there are four cardinal directions, with the center point being the figure in the very middle. Okay, but it's very important to think of 5 directions for compass points and the center, the epicenter of the world. Next, please. In the western region, in a place called Colima, there are many of these types of terracotta dogs that were fired, and most appear monochromatic today, just the color of the clay, followed in the center, some of them wearing human masks on their face, but these were found in burial sites in the western or occidental states of Mexico. Colima, which is famous for this really extraordinary carving of mostly animals, and you do see other animals from Colima as well, but predominantly dogs, and the dogs are symbolic of the guardian or guide that takes the deceased into the afterworld. So before they sculpted these, it was said that they would sacrifice a dog and bury the dog with the deceased. Animal rights activists didn't like that very much, so the clay surrogates of the actual animal will do the job, and this is how one gets to where they need to go in the afterworld, because they don't have the vision, but the dog can guide them to that next place to find their final resting place. So the ancestors were revered in ancient Mesoamerica, and the dogs would take them through the underworld into the next life. So we find these in the tombs at Colima on the western states of Mexico. Next, please. Also in the western state, the culture of Nayarit are some of the great makers of ceramic pieces, working with clay, and they have a lot of couples. These are archetypal representations, not realistic, far less realistic as the anatomically excellent works by the Maya, but these are archetypes of females and males, and we differentiate them by the implements that they carry, like the man holding a spear in his hand, a drum in another hand, and the woman holding a vessel or some cooking instrument not far from the place of the domestic setting. So both are pairs from Nayarit, also the western coast of Mexico. Next, please. In the early formative years, about 200 BCE, in the Patan jungle, which is just in the heartland of Guatemala today, across the border from Mexico. But remember, there were no borders, and the Maya were fluid. They would move from Chiapas into across the Usinacenta River into Guatemala, and it was all part of the same cultural fabric, but again, no borders at that time. In the early formative years, my colleague, who I invited to Farmingdale a few years back, Bill Saturno, came up with one of the greatest discoveries in 2001. It was the discovery of San Bartolo. And these are the murals that were done around 100 BCE, the earliest examples of Maya painted murals that we know of today, and also the earliest example of writing, which Mayanologists have no idea that they were writing this far back in time or history. Now we're looking at this little temple here that's since been engulfed by a much larger pyramid here. And that's the way most of these would be constructed. There would be a small little construction, and then as time went by, they would add to it and engulf and completely cover up the earlier construction. So this was no longer used when they covered up with rocks and detritus that filled over and built this enormous pyramid in the Patan jungle of Guatemala. Inside the west and north walls, Bill Saturno, who nearly died in this discovery, he was in the Patan far longer than he had prepared for. He was just going out on a daily expedition. But in the early rainy season, there'll be downed trees, and you have to have a buzzsaw to get through, and you can get stuck. And if you don't have the right provisions, you can easily die. He probably started to go in and out of consciousness and stayed inside this cool little shaft that protected him for the meanwhile. And as he started to go in and out of consciousness, he looked across at the wall, and in a looter's tunnel, he discovered paintings, which you'll see on the top right. That's one of the early gods, one of the hero twins with the spots of the leopard and the breathing glyph that's coming out of his nose. This is what it looks like without any embellishments. And just behind the head of Bill, that's from the north wall, discovered in 2001. So these are all details, and it has some of the most intricate iconography. But what you won't see on these Maya paintings is any blue. Blue didn't exist yet. This is the early formative period, and we're still several hundred years away from the first use of blues. Next, please.
Could they have used the blue that disappeared?
Good thought, but no.
Yeah.
Because they do have quite a bit of remnants of this fresco that fell off and were sealed underneath the larger construction up above, but no blues.
Okay.
You got blue caps for the Tupperware, but no blue on the. Okay, so this is Heather Hurst, another colleague of mine who teaches up at Skidmore College at the Tang Gallery a couple of years ago. She got a MacArthur Genius Award grant to reconstruct the temple that was discovered by Bill Saturno. He was teaching at the time at Boston University. He's no longer there. He's retired and living in Connecticut. But Heather is still teaching, and she's working on these murals, and she produced some really exquisite watercolors because it's such a thin looter's tunnel that it's impossible to really step back too far. Next, please. You can see it's pretty narrow, and if you're prone to claustrophobia, you don't want to be down here. This is the primary god figure, and he appears 5 times, and he's doing something that I don't recommend ever trying. He's auto-sacrificing. Now, Maya would bleed from 2 places. Women would bleed by pricking the tongue and then letting blood droplets fill on pieces of fabric that would then be burned to see visions. And the men would slice the shaft of the penis and bleed through that. You'll see he's bleeding out of the front of his body, and he's making an offering of a bird that's been sacrificed on an altar to one of the 5 principal bird deities. Next, please. You're looking at a scan here, and the best way that Bill could photograph this in the year that he discovered this, and he was then given a big grant from National Geographic magazine, where David Stewart's father, George, was on board there and funded the project for Bill Saturno. He didn't have a camera that could photograph this little thin shaft, so he got clever, as most artists will do, and he did scans, a computer scan, holding the scanner right up to the wall, and took sections, which he then pieced together. And this is the second of the 5 sacrifices, a fish. So there's a fish, there's a deer, and there's a bird. These are related to the elements, the water, the sky, and the earth. Next, please. Oh, by the way, I should go back, that bottom right, say a word of this. The woman is a captive, and she's got her hands bound. The woman behind her is free, but the captive might very well be subjected to being sacrificed next. We don't know what's going to happen, but this is one of the very, very, very rare occasions that Mesoamerican art represents nudity. And there are a lot of bare-breasted women in the San Bartolo murals. Next, please. So in these recreations by Heather Hurst, and they're outlined as the first god making a fish sacrifice, the second god making the deer sacrifice, the third god making the turkey sacrifice, an indigenous bird from the Americas, and then the others representing the one that I mentioned already, the principal bird deity, the bird. We'll see those are the offerings, and in each case, the bird is sacrificed, or the deer, or the fish, and the person doing the sacrificing gives his own blood, and this is how the universe is laid out, facing in 5 cardinal directions with 5 sacrifices. So we come back to the quincunx again. On the bottom, this is that sacrifice scene, and there's a dark-skinned figure in the middle who has a gourd, which is where the first earliest Maya glyph appears, long before we thought the Maya were writing. There it is over here. It's a simple glyph. Women in front offering a big vase of tamale, and another woman who we identified as a captive behind, and figures who are bringing large bushels for the offering as there's a big celebration taking place. But take a look at this, where the glyph appears in the center of the gourd. There's a bloody explosion coming out of the gourd, and there are 5 infant babies, one in the center, 4 at each corner. Again, the quincunx representing the 5 cardinal directions and the 5 points throughout the universe. And that's all happening in this explosion of the blood, the source of life, and the 5 babies that come out of a gourd. Next, please. Now, John will probably see this. This is about the most psychedelic art you'll ever see in the ancient Americas. It has a very, I mean, I could see these in a concert poster or a concert P very easily. I mean, it just lends itself to that with the design and the spirals and the circles. This is an earth band on the bottom. And just for division of space, you got a sky band on the top and earth band down below. And this is for whom the sacrifice is being done. We call him the principal bird deity, the PBD, and he appears frequently for whom these sacrifices are being made. Here you see the guy, again, auto-sacrificing, and this is something always makes me squirm when I see this, but not recommended, but it's one of the 2 places in the body that does heal and doesn't scar from, but I'm not ready to try that. Next up. And these are also the Heather Hurst watercolors that really captured what doesn't transport. You can see these reproduced in our country, and Heather Hurst is the artist who did these, being on site and recording them and doing some really faithful drawings. She had done the same with the Bonaparte murals with Mary Miller in Mexico, and then this is the follow-up just a few years later. So we see here some examples of that exploding gourd that I pointed out earlier, and the sacrificing figures, auto-sacrificing, bleeding, and then the sacrificial offering, the deer, and to the right, the bird.
So the at the very end is that the woman that doing the tongue sacrifice tongue?
This is no, this is a woman who's holding the vase of tamales and making an offering of food, the tamales that are inside that vase, and painted, tattooed face. Okay, and another detail which has
You can see it better.
yeah, that's a much better example. But it's very rare that you would see nudity in Mesoamerican art. Just doesn't appear as often as it does in this one painting from San Bartolo. Okay, next please.
Right.
And these are the last of the images. The dying maize god. The maize god dies every year, but he's then resurrected and comes back. It's on the plate. And this is the figure on the left with Tyndon crowning the king on the scaffolding as he's the rule. And the maize god dies and the king is crowned. And then there's a cyclical description every year. The Maya thought of life not as a linear process, but a cyclical process. And it was always revolving, never just in one direction, but a cyclical nature, as their calendars attest to. Next, please. This is the recreated San Bartolo space with a few of the fragments that they're still trying to piece together and figure out what goes where. I attended a conference here and had the pleasure of getting a walking tour through this space by Bill Saturno, who was telling me, oh, that this is where we found this, and this is where I was resting at the time when I discovered the murals. But this was created by Heather Hurst at the Tang Gallery up at Skidmore in Saratoga, New York. It's not a permanent installation. It was a temporary show in the space about half the size of this entire gallery. Okay, next, please. Okay, the next city, which we'll take a look at, is probably the most important city in all of the Americas, with the largest population, over 200,000, And to think of 200,000 people in ancient times in the Americas being sustained in a place, that's pretty extraordinary. But Teotihuacan is that place, and it seems to have served a central government seat of power for religious and authority purposes. In this city, we have three major structures. Here we have the Temple of the Moon, here the Temple of the Sun, and in the foreground here, which is located right around here on this map, is the Temple of Quetzalcoatl, which has the most sculpture on it because it was completely covered. And when the city was burned to an incinerated ash around 600 in the Common Era, that building survived with all of its sculpture because it was covered by an outer shell of a new building that was destroyed. Archaeologists have removed that, and we have some of the finest things, saurian heads, and a number of interesting designs, including the snake motif slithering across the side of that temple. The moon, the sun are the two largest pyramids at the site. And if you're wondering, well, did they have any contact with the Egyptians? No. The inspiration comes from the mountains, which is divine and man-made. So that's how they got the idea. And it's a very practical design, a wider base and a narrower top. Next, please. That's a broad view down the Avenue of the Dead, which was erroneously called that by the Aztecs, the Moon Pyramid and the Sun Pyramid. And just behind that is the Pyramid of Quetzalcoatl down here. Now, in ancient times, there was a river that ran right through this site. And it's assumed we don't have any ball courts in the city. There's a ball court in just about every Mesoamerican city, but not in Teotihuacan. And why is that? Well, it's very possible that this was all flooded, and it was the ball court that was then filled with water after the rainy season. And it served as a reservoir for the rest of the year when things got dry. Next, please. And this is the Quetzalcoatl pyramid with headdresses and the Tlaloc goggle eye dress, the saurian heads, and this is the rattle from a rattlesnake in the body of the plumed serpent, Quetzalcoatl. So you see feathers and a snake's body that moves loudly around the pyramid, and then one could stand underneath this and have a headdress, and then these are saurian heads with floral rosettes that come around the collar of those saurian heads. Next, please. So Teotihuacan's greatest source of wealth came from obsidian, and they mined the obsidian from the nearby volcano, and that's a volcanic glass that could be chiseled and made to be the sharpest instrument, and everybody needed a piece of it to cut meat. If you're going to eat meat off of the bone, you needed an obsidian knife. Also, it was a weapon, and it was used as ornamental jewelry, but that was the source of wealth of the city of Teotihuacan, and they were also the seat of government that seems to have been kingmakers across the ancient Mesoamerican world, including sending some guys to Maya cities, including Tikal and Copan, to install them as kings in the beginnings of their dynasties. These are what's called incensarios, things to burn incense, and the incense would be burned in the repository. And then we see masks with these piercings and little decorative jewelry underneath the nose, which is in the shape of a butterfly. The butterfly is symbolic of the descent in the afterlife of the warrior who becomes a spirit force and is represented by the butterfly. So you'll see a butterfly nose ornament, again here, and again here. It would be a common form. You can imagine wearing one, and if you were speaking, it would flutter and also probably resonate as you were speaking with that in front of your mouth, beneath your nose. There's a bird over his head. In this case, there are god-aligned figures related to Tlaloc, the rain god, but these are terracotta ceramic incensarios used to burn copal, which is a resin berry that's located throughout Chiapas and the Petang jungle. A very beautiful aromatic smell that would be burned in these incense burners. Next up.
So just before you go, notice like the faces of all three, like the one on the right is realistic,
Mhm.
you know, and then the one in the middle is very abstract.
Yeah,
So,
and this one is clearly a more mask-like.
yes,
With ear spools on the side, but you're right, the one on the far right is more realistic. There's also these round designs, and the center of those are formica. You know, we generally think of formica as something for the countertop, but they mined this and they used it as a decorative material. But that's a shiny, reflective material of formica. At the Metropolitan Museum of Art, you can see one of these host figures, and this always reminded me of that game Operation, where inside the body you take out with tweezers these little parts. But these are host figures with removable chest plate. This is a chest plate that would be turned around, and if it were back together, this would be on the inside of his chest. But you can see some sculptures on the inside. The butterfly nose piercing underneath the nose and eyes, and different figures and objects, shells that are on the inside of this host figure. Now, this carries over into some of the Maya world, and we see host figures made by the Maya in the later centuries. But the Maya and the Teotihuacanos seem to have a lot of crossover. In fact, Teotihuacan probably was some central seat of power, because we know at least two great empires in the world of the Maya, Tikal and Copan, were rulers from the city of Teotihuacan. So they'll bring some of the cultural elements into these outlying places. Next. And this is something that you want to give your best friend for a lovely jewelry this Valentine's Day, right? It's coming up next month. Don't miss that. This is a necklace, and the necklace is the teeth and plates, top and bottom, of the enemy that would be worn as a pectoral around one's neck as a sign of conquest. It's you know, to say you'll be born one day has a new meaning now. This one are actual dental plates, and these are facsimiles carved out of stone and cornelian and shell that makes up the facsimile of the actual dental plates and real teeth that would be worn as a ceremonial, aha, I got you, as wearing that vanquish around the neck. Next, please. John mentioned the word syncretism earlier today, and syncretism relates to the old culture, the culture that will be the topic next month. But this is the church of Santa Maria Remedios, or St. Mary who heals, on the top of the largest pyramid in the Americas. This is called Cholula, which you always thought was just a hot sauce, but it's more than that. It's the city which had one of the most powerful city-state statuses in Central Valley, Mexico. North of Oaxaca, it's south of Puebla and Mexico City, and it is the site of the largest pyramid. But as a symbol of conquest, the Spanish were very good at repurposing old sacred places into the new places of worship. So right on top of the largest pyramid, a Catholic church dedicated to St. Mary's, who redeems and cures. Next up, please.
is that who that was?
This is El Tajín, not far from the core of Veracruz and the Olmec world, another ball court. And El Tajín has two dominant ball courts, but I want to focus your attention on the relief panels on the right and look at what's going on here. So the ball court would be where the game was played, the ball moving east and west, and then after the game was finished, well, here's sacrificial victim. And you can argue amongst yourselves, is it the winner, loser? I'll go with Joseph Campbell's theory. And here we'll see this guy getting subjugated by two figures on either side as his heart is extracted. Now, after the heart is extracted, that's the energy that fuels the sun and allows for the sun to continue because it needs petrol to keep it moving. And if your car runs out of gas, it's not going to move. So again, using the heart as the source of energy, the bird dives down, takes the heart, and flies off and gives it to the gods. And that's the myth and belief. On the top panel, you'll see a diving god over the sacrificial victim. In the bottom panel, you'll see the bird on the altar, squishing this sacrificial victim between the two priest attendants on either side as it's receiving the heart and flying off with the heart to rejuvenate the sun in the rotations of the sun in the next cycle. Next, please. These are both Maya ceramic vessels. This is a chocolate pot on the right, and this is a Codex style cup, which I introduced earlier. The line makes it Codex style. This is probably one of the coolest things. And if you're not convinced that the Maya were the most sophisticated ancient civilization, on par with some of the great discoveries of the Greeks and the Romans and the Egyptians and the Mesopotamians, this is something that has a lockable seal, childproofing it. It's actually to monkey-proof it because the monkeys like chocolate so much that they would get into these pots. So they made something that was a lock. By turning it, it was unopenable, and the monkeys didn't figure that one out. And the pot, once it was discovered, was sent to the Hershey Company in Pennsylvania, and they found the residue of the chemical analysis of remains of chocolate. So they said, yeah, that was a chocolate pot, okay. And that was found on the bottom with glyphs around the side that also support the idea that this was a pot for chocolate storage, but with a locking lid that would turn just like those childproof medicine jars. Next slide. Some of the great cities will include Tikal, and for the fans of Star Wars, you probably saw the flyover in this place when they were looking for rebel bases. George Lucas was a great fan of Mayan mythology and traveled there and tried to figure out a way how he could get that into the first Star Wars movie. That's Temple 1, and this is in the rainforest of the Patan, just across the border from Mexico, but into this place that had no borders in the Acropolis area. The difference between the Maya constructions in Tikal and everywhere else is the more vertical, svelte temples that make up the Tikal temples, and there are quite a few there. Next up.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
That city, was it not found for a long, long time? Was it kind of hidden from the conquistadors? I was under the impression when we were down in Mexico that city in particular was well hidden because it was so ingrained in the jungle.
Yeah, this is pretty deep into the rainforest and not so easily obtainable. But the Maya held out for much, much longer than the Aztec because the Maya would hit and run back into the forest, and the Spanish were not equipped to go into the forest. So this is really in the deep, dense woods, and there are no roads in and out of there. So, and once the rainy season hits, it'll take you about 10 days to go 10 miles because the trees start to fall and the mud fills the streets. So very difficult travel.
The other thing I just heard the other day on a podcast about the Aztecs was one of the reasons they were conquerors because they had so many enemies within Mexico. So
that's true.
You know, it's had a lot of allies.
Well, they built.
They only came with like not that many people.
500 Spaniards.
Yeah.
But all the enemy tribes of the Aztec. So it was Union alliance,
Right.
Something that you might argue that the Spanish didn't win and the smallpox didn't win the war. It was a civil war that toppled the Aztec. But there was a triple alliance, and yes, that's correct.
Was it with the other tribes, the Spanish and smallpox?
Yeah, smallpox
Took out everybody.
a lot of people.
Yeah, not just the.
And that was done by the Spanish by happenstance. They had experienced that, and then there was no immunity against that in the Americas. Next up. Now, 10 kilometers north of Tikal, which took about an hour to drive to for the rough conditions that I explained, there used to be an airstrip in this little city called Washington. And Washington, which you'll see up here, has oftentimes been compared to the name of the capital of our country. It sounds a lot like George Washington's last name. And it's pronounced very, very similarly. So 10 kilometers of Tikal through really poorly maintained roads and down trees and muddy conditions, you'll come to this place, which has one of the best preserved E groups anywhere in the world. Now, an E group, for any archaeoastronomers, you know what this is. Just like Stonehenge, it's a way to record the times of the year and the growing and the harvest season based on the solstice and where the sun is at each time of the year. So an E group has a fixed point, which we'll see in this UPenn model here, and that's what it looked like when it was discovered in the last century. Somebody had covered it up with a lot of rubble and built a peak at the top, but it was a smaller fort. This is what it looks like today. And sitting right at the top here and looking across the stela, which is a stone carved monument in front of this main building, which is seen down here, you can look straight ahead through the center of the stela at the center building, looking due east. You can look east-west, and you can look northeast. Right? So those 3 points will have 3 temples, and during the different solstices and equinoxes, the sun would come up at different places at different times of the year. So the summer solstice, it was over this building, over the center building, for the next, in the spring and in the fall, and then here at the winter. So we go 1, 2, 3 back to the center, as this was the cycle we would take at 4 different points in the calendrical solar calendar year. Okay, but that's what the nature of an E group is, called E because an E has 3 stems, and these are the 3 buildings that the sun aligns with from that fixed point, the top of this building, across that little sunken valley. Next
So
up.
one of the things that's you can't imagine here is like we have the sun, in the different seasons, it's so different, but there it doesn't vary nearly as much. So,
True,
but like if you tried to do that up here, they would be so far apart. But there's very little change in the height of the sun as you get closer to the equator.
That's true. That's true. Are you aware of Manhattanhenge that occurs
Yes.
every year?
Well,
Well, there's a solar alignment through the buildings in the grid system of New York City, and it's the same principle.
I think it was unintentional, though. That was unintentional. We didn't build New York to have that. I don't think.
Sure about that?
I'm sure.
Washington was very intentional. Washington, D.C., with the Washington Monument across the mall and the Capitol, that was designed in a very intentional manner.
Yeah.
Which might change.
Just like the city service, I thought it was like Washington.
Washington,
We
yeah.
think it's city,
Yeah.
you said 3 temples.
Right.
I thought the White House was Washington.
Well, the White House is a little bit off. A little bit
Yes,
more off
it
these
is.
days than it has been. It's not in that alignment. It's the Washington Monument, the Smithsonian Mall with the Lincoln Memorial and the pond in front of it, all the way straight down. We draw a big line to the center of the Capitol.
And you have Myolin's memorial pointing to.
Yeah. Yeah, but those might be changed with new triumphant arches soon. But
Yeah, waiting for those, right?
Jefferson got.
The Jefferson Memorial is looking right.
Okay, getting close to the end here, and some of the most significant sites of the Maya world brings us to the city of Palenque, which is in Chiapas, Mexico, in the southeast corner. And in Palenque, you have the palace of the king. Kings were called ahaus, and this is the tomb of the inscriptions, which was discovered in the mid-20th century by a Mexican archaeologist who discovered a false floor on the top of that 5-doored temple, went down into a staircase. Let's go to the next slide, please. And down in that staircase, on the ground level, was the tomb of Lord Pakal. Pakal means shield in English, but Pakal ruled in the 7th century, and he had such an elaborate palace. It had running water coming in, toilet water going out. It had airports, holes for air to blow through, not airplane ports, but T-shaped glyphs, which was the glyph for wind called ik, and the wind would come through the palace so that it was aerated throughout the day. When he was buried, his son had overseen the burial of his father. And there's only one way to do this. You all know how to put a ship into a bottle, right? You have to start with the ship and then build around. In this case, the tomb went in first, and then that staircase went around it, and the temple went on the top. So there is no getting this out of there. They have removed some of the beautiful jewelry that was on his body, and the skeletal remains. Let's go to the next one, please. And the tomb has this elaborate carved lid, which is the sarcophagus lid of Lord Pakal. Spot, we have a jade death mask, ear spools, and counterweights that come out, necklace, bracelets, jade in his hands, and jade on his penis. In this lid, which was laying horizontally over where the body was buried, and this is an artist's illustration in case you can see this a little bit clearer, this is what led that crazy harebrained theory about the chariot of the gods to describe these as early spacemen taking off like the Apollo 11 astronauts. Well, it's not. And coming out of the center of Lord Pakal is this tree which brings new life after his death. He's also in the act of auto-sacrifice. He's bleeding from the penis, and with that has new life, just as in the sacrifice that we saw in that early formative San Bartolo mural. On the sides, there's additional carving that represents his ancestors as different species of agriculture, tobacco plants, and various growths. But he's the dominant figure, and surrounding him underneath is the maw of a monster, suggesting the entry into the underworld, which is the cave, the journey to Shambhala and the beyond. Next, please. His wife, we believe, was buried in an adjacent temple in a tomb that was completely covered with mercury. Now, mercury is very poisonous and deadly. That's why she's called the Red Queen, because the entire interior of her tomb was covered with this mercury dust. And this is not jade, but is a greenstone, the second best if you don't have jade. You would carve with greenstone, and this is her death mask, jade ear spools and necklace, and a crown, probably consisting of something organic that would have kept those discs together, that no longer exists. And the whites of the eyes and the black is made from shells and obsidian. But this is greenstone, and this came to the Met just a few years ago. Next, please.
Are they trying to repatriate those?
Well, they are in Mexico today.
Oh.
In fact, Lord Pakal's death mask was stolen on Christmas Day out of the Mexico City Museo Antropología, but it's since been returned. And that was another case of, oops, the security camera was off and they got away with the goods. Not far from Palenque, in Chiapas, as Palenque is and Bonampak is, there's a small city by the name of Yaxchitlan. And Yaxchitlan has a number of relief sculptures. These are lintels that have a sacred subject of Lady Shock and Shield Jaguar. Shield Jaguar is holding a torch over the head of his wife, who's in the act of pulling this rope through her tongue with thorns on it to let blood out. And then the blood is gathered in these pieces of linen and later burned so that she can have a vision cycle in the next subject. That's what she's doing up here, until 25. She has a vision serpent, and as the blood drops on the linen are burned and start to smoke, the smoke turns into a vision of, in this case, an ancestor, in this case, a serpent. There is one glyph on the upper left of one of the two vision cycles, which I've blown up over here. And the glyph is conjuring. That's what it translates as. It's a hand holding a fish. Now, have you ever tried to hold a fish in your hand? It's very slippery and it goes away. So a vision cycle is a very slippery process. It's not something that's so clear, but can easily slip away. And with that, that's the glyph that represents the glyph for conjuring, or in other words, talking with the ancestors and the netherworld, gods and ancestors in the next realm. And that's the reason for the auto sacrifice. Kings and queens were expected to sacrifice because they had so much, but to show their people that they were working for them, they would sacrifice. Here you can see some traces of the Maya blue. These were entirely painted, and a shout out to the wonderful sewing work of the Guatemalan and Chiapas women today. These are some of the textiles that are worn by the queen, which we see Guatemalan and Mexican women still to this day sewing and creating these wonderful textiles. Shout out to the graphic designers. The way that these glyphs relate to the figures is a lot like the way that word bubbles would relate to graphic novels in this really well-designed space. Next up, please. And as we get to the last of our works, this is Altar Q from Copan, which is across the border into Honduras. And the first and the 14th of their rulers, all seen on the outside of this altar, where sacrifice and all offerings would be made on this glyph-covered top. The side has 4 kings on each side, and the goggles suggest that this guy, the first of the dynasty of 16 rulers, came from Teotihuacan because he's wearing the goggle-eyed lenses of the god Tlaloc. So he's their first founder, the first of 16, and they die out at the end of the High Classic period in the late 8th century. Lord Rabbit, guy over here, 18 Rabbit, has some of the most amazing sculptures of him. And this is done in a very soft stone from the nearby volcanic stone that's easy to carve. John will tell you about hard stones and soft stones, but this is a much softer stone, like a tufa, and it allows for deeper carving of the stela and these beautiful representations with high headdresses of Lord 18 Rabbit. Next up, please. And as we get to some of our last of the Maya, this is from Jaena, a small island off of the Yucatan Peninsula, where a lot of these small figurines were made. Now, these are terribly mismatched. A young woman, a beautiful young woman, an old, lecherous man, but he represents the sun, she represents the moon, at oppositions, but also united forever, as they represent the two forces between them. And here you can see some long-lasting traces of the Maya blue that were applied at the tail end of the classic period. From Princeton University, we have the Princeton vase, and he's a really old lecherous guy who's giving a gift to this young woman, but there's always attachments. You want to watch out for what old men give young women in this bracelet around her wrist. But he's also somebody who is not just old, but also wearing the headdress of the principal bird deity. So he's also a god and representing something more than just what meets the eye. The rabbit on the bottom represents the scribe, and the scribe is the court documenter who writes down everything that happens at court. Next up, please. My favorite vase is this one, which is going to roll out. That was invented by Justin Kerr, who made this like a record player that allowed him to photograph with a slow shutter speed a round vase, which is full round, but he stretches it out so we can see it all flash at one time, rather than turning it around, which is not the way that the Maya would experience it, but it sure makes my job as an art history teacher a lot easier. So this is the rollout, as we call it. And the rollout has scenes from a day at court. In the center, this rather overweight fellow is the Ahau. He's the Lord. And we know that he doesn't do much exercise. He just sits around and barks orders. He has very long, not ergonomic fingernails. So his fingernails, again, testament, he's not working for what he does in this world. Now, this is a stand with a mirror, and the mirror is obsidian. And the mirror reflects him because that's all he likes to do, see pictures of himself and images of himself. So that's a stand held by a mummy and the reflection in the obsidian. There are odd people that the king has in his court, and we know that kings usually keep really bizarre people around them. There's this figure who is the dwarf, this figure who is the hunchback, and this is the yes man, and the flowers in the back. But they're being entertained by musicians who we hear, but we don't see. Just the fronts of their hats and shells appear from behind a wall, suggesting that it's heard but not seen. And then lastly, in the back of the throne, we have the security guard, make sure that the king is safe and nothing goes awry. So he's having another drink of the frothy cacao, and that's his favorite drink. There's a description of who he is, what time period this is. This is from the Inca kingdom, the Maya, from about the 8th century. Next up, please.
So what you said, and you know, it looks like a political cartoon, and I can't get that now out of my head. And this literally looks like this is done to mock this. The monkey holding the mirror and war. So this was made? That's just modern interpretation. I'm assuming this actually was made as tribute, not as mocking.
Correct.
But
and it's on a cup that the king probably himself drank out of. But no, this is not mockery or
right.
No irony.
Contemporary, I was sure.
Well, he believed it was a tribute.
To fiction, so don't look at it as mockery or mockery. It's hard to grasp. Okay, and next up, we have a good example of Maya dentistry, which has that aesthetic insert of jade set right into the teeth. And we believe that that was done not posthumously, but for the living as ornamental body decoration. But when my students usually reel back, they say, "Oh, how could they do that?" I say, "Well, think about what Americans in the 21st century do for body modifications." And I won't go any further than that. This is something that the Maya did practice, is putting jade to practice what we call cranial deformations and binding the cranium to differentiate the aristocracy from the ordinary peasants. Next up. And we'll go through these a little faster. These are the Atlanteans from Tula. That's the Toltec, which was a warrior class just north of Mexico City. Next up. And the last of the great empires was the Aztecs. And they were built on a lake, as we saw earlier in that map that was used by Cortez in the 1520s. This was painted by Diego Rivera. And it's one of the many representations of ancient civilizations that you'll see in the National Palace today. Next up. The center of that plan of the city, by the way, was the Templo Mayor, the main temple dedicated to two gods. And the two gods are Tlaloc, the rain god, and Huitzilopochtli, the war god. Okay, that's the monumental sculpture. We'll go forward one. These two works by the Aztecs represent this fertility goddess, Coatlicue, who has two heads of snakes. We call that a bicephalic head, and a snake skirt, which is how she gets the name Coatlicue, which means skirt of snakes. A skull in the center, talons on the bottom. She's somebody that you don't want to mess around with. So she had 400 children, and when she had another child, apparently she was impregnated by a feather that fell down into the temple precinct, and it impregnated her. Obviously, this is mythical. She then was expecting her 401st child, and the other children said, "Can you believe Mom's going to have another?" I mean, this is out of control now. So they conspired to kill the newborn child. Little did they know it would be the war god Huitzilopochtli. So he killed his 400 nasty brothers, and he cut up his nasty sister, who we see here. That's the moon goddess, Coyoshoki. And Coyoshoki, in these cut up pieces, represents the different sizes of the moon in the different cycles of the 28 days. So there's a practical reason for her dismemberment, but you can see she's in a pretty bad way. She's looking down, sort of been brightly colored with red at the severed joints of where Huitzilopochtli cut her into smaller pieces. And next up, this is the earth goddess, the earth deity, Tlatlaque. And there's a large hole in the center because she represents all that purifies in the earth. And we still believe this in certain places. If you're a farmer or a gardener, you use fertilizer. So what goes into the earth as garbage, death, and detritus comes out as nutrients for the ground. And the earth is an amazing place. John will tell you that. It's self-sufficient as long as we don't Anthropocene it to death. It's very self-sustaining. So we throw garbage away and it becomes nutrients for the next year's growth. And that's what this fertility earth deity represents, taking the dead and then bringing life from the dirt and the throwaway. Next up. Now this guy really freaks out all my students. It's Aztec god by the name of Chipitotec. And Chipitotec represents the beginning of the growing season. He's wearing the flayed skin of a sacrificial victim. You'll see it tied to the back from here. And he has a death mask. You'll see that it's taken out of the center and not bothered to stitch it up. He's wearing the skin of a sacrificial human victim. So there's oftentimes hands that hang down from his wrist. And he does this for a full month cycle. Usually gets the attention of the local kids, the local animals, dogs and cats follow him around. It smells really good. And then at the end of the month, which is a 20-day cycle, it just withers off of his body. And this is the shedding of the skin that brings the new growing season in the beginning of the springtime. But he's represented as an agrarian reference. His name is Chipitotec. I think the Silence of the Lambs play a reference to something macabre along those lines, but the Aztecs had it first. Next up. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about are the day signs. And there are 20 day signs for the 20 days, 18 months of the year, so 360 days. Each day sign has a name and it's represented by a different symbol. Not all of them are anthropomorphic. Some of them are objects like houses, flint. Others are creatures like the skull, the lizard, the vulture, eagle, deer, dog. But they all have a name, and each day has a name. So we have 7 names for the 7 days of the week. They had 20 names for the 20 days of the 18 months each year. And this was a culture that was very much in tune with the cycles of time. They understood time better than we do today, or certainly me. And yeah. But this is a reference to the wind god and the death god, 2 characters back to back representing life and death, and then the day signs around. Next up. So to give you something that's a lot easier to read and translate it into English, these are the different days, 20 days, and John can tell you what his day sign is now.
Oh,
1 monkey,
one
2
monkey, 2 dog. No, 2 monkeys.
2 monkeys, and 1 dog.
Yes.
Okay. I happen to be 1 monkey, 1 monkey.
That's why I know.
Okay, so what your day sign is, I can show you how to do that. I don't know if Isabella's still here, but we know
Yeah,
her day sign now. But everybody was born on a different day, and if your birthday is on the same day as a friend, if it's not the same year, it doesn't matter because they change over every 52 years and no single day remains the same for a 52-year cycle, which is very symbolic in numerology. So let's take a quick look at this Mishtek manuscript page. It's from the Zush Nutal from the 12th century. It tells the story of a very heroic character by the name of Lord Eight Deer. He's playing in the ball court here, but there's no perspective. There's the eye shape of the ball court that we saw earlier, and there's the side of that Mitla-inspired architecture on the side of the court. Who is he? Well, there's a leopard, and there are 6 dots. So that's 6 leopard playing the ball game. And then you'll see a couple of guys standing up in the kayaks who are moving, and the symbol next to them is the name of the person. For instance, that's a vulture. Count the dots, 2, 4, 6, 8, 8 vulture. This is a toponym, which is a place sign, and this is a year sign, which has that A and the oval shape and a flint down through the center. So it's giving us the year. And these are the original graphic novels of the Mixtec Aztec cultures from Central Valley, Mexico. They tell stories without any words, no writing, but just pictographic in ways that we can interpret places, years, and people based on those day signs. Okay, so it's all related back to the 20 day signs. And let's go back to the last image, which I think is, no, forward, please.
Oh, well, you don't go back.
The next thing. Okay. And the center of this sunstone, which is by the last culture of the Mesoamerican Pre-Columbian period, around this central circle, you'll see 20 day signs. Okay, now bringing everything together in this one work that comes to us by way of sometime between 1350 and 1521 before the conquest, and we see a sun god's face in the center, the four cardinal directions going up, left, down, and right. You see these flaming caterpillars going around the outside with heads on the bottom and human heads coming out from the mouths of the flaming caterpillars whose backs are on fire. And then we see four glyphs in the center, which suggest the destruction of the world the first four times. And in short, this is a representation of the fifth sun, which we live in today. And every 52 years, there would be a new fire ceremony. If the gods accepted the sacrifice, there would be another 52 years. If the gods said, nope, not good enough, we're not putting the sun back on, that would be the end of the sun, and you'd have to hope that there's another sun. Everything ceases to exist, and the world starts anew again. So the world had been destroyed four times before. One time it was completely eaten by jaguars, another time it was blown away, another time it was flooded, and the fourth time it was torrentially wiped out. So four different glyphs that we see in these corners that were the destruction of the first four suns. And we are, as I mentioned, in the period of the fifth sun. The old sun god with the wrinkled face is in the center, also a surrogate for the emperor of the Aztec Empire. There is a date sign that suggested this is late 15th century. And then there are claws with talons at the end, left and right of the head, as he's ready to pounce and end the world yet the next time. Next, please. This is an Aztec warrior wearing a labret, and the labret has a movable tongue. This must have really freaked out the opponents. It's made out of gold, and it's only the Mixtec and the Aztec who will start to revere gold, because before then, gold was not known in Mexico. It was in South America, but not in Mexico until about the 12th century. This would be a piercing just underneath the bottom lip, and that tongue would move back and forth. Imagine me wearing one of these during the lecture. No way anybody could concentrate, because you'd see this waggling tongue of the snake, but this must have really freaked out the opponents. And that's how it would have been fastened in that area, just underneath the lip. As this can be seen in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and this comes from a book from the early 16th century, just about the time of the contact and conquest. Okay, short
So
story.
that piece is like, I pierced into the,
Labret.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, right through here, and there'd be a fastener in front of the bottom teeth.
Right.
So kids do that frequently these days. I don't see anybody with one of those, but my students still do that. More commonly through the septum up here.
Gotcha.
Right is also a place where you might see her. Okay, so the only reason that this exists today, the Spanish had stolen all the gold from the New World and brought it back and melted it down, and they didn't really respect the people who they conquered. They just wanted the gold and the glory, and it wasn't for God or all those other things that they claimed. But a pirate intercepted this and thought, hey, this is really cool. I could wear one of these. And this is the only reason that it wasn't melted down. It was saved by a looting pirate who thought, this would really freak out my pirate buddies if I show up on deck with one of these. So it exists today, and it's in the collection of the Metropolitan. It's only about this big. It's the size of a labret, but it's got a movable tongue and still very much intact. Glass piece. So this is the 52nd slide, and the 52-year cycle is all about the fire ceremony. And if the fire ceremony is not accepted by the gods, the sun extinguishes and it doesn't go back on again until the gods decide to make a new world. And they usually have to sacrifice themselves to become the next sun, the next moon. So they have to draw lots and decide who's going to do that if they want to. But each 52-year cycle, all lights on Earth are extinguished, and the priests come from the four corners and meet at the quincunx, the center, and they reignite the fires every 52 years. And with that, this 52-year cycle is coming to a renew sooner than you'd like to know. So I won't freak anybody out. But, it's the next cycle is very soon. But don't worry about it. We're not really practicing that 52-year cycle anymore. These are the footprints, the path of travel, and these are the various priests who are reigniting and relighting the fire to extend the life of the current fifth sun. So with that, thanks so much for your attention.
Okay, thank you. Gonna be hard to follow next time. Where you go?
Karen, well, I can't guarantee anything, but there will be a continuation of the sun.
Yes, of course.
Anybody have any questions? I know we answered a lot.
Spencer.
In between, yeah.
And the shedding of the skin and all the other snake imagery, does like snake skin shedding feature in Pre-Columbian?
Sure, yeah, they're the ones that do it, and it's about rebirth. And so the rebirth of the seasons, the rebirth of the skinned snake that sheds its skin, but it's still it has more beautiful skin underneath that. So yeah, it's all linked with that mythology of life and rebirth. Absolutely, yes.
So I'm fascinated with the time aspect, because I've never heard of that. And so every 52 years, we didn't really get a new sun.
No, it would be a new fire ceremony, but the new sun, you don't want a new sun every 52 years.
There's
That
only
means
been
it's the
four.
end of the world.
There's only been four.
Yeah.
So since that time, and you know when the next sun is coming up, so you people have charted the 52-year cycles. Somewhere they paid attention to that.
Yeah, they were a few years off from the 52-year cycle when the conquest occurred in 1521. They would have had the next one, I think, in 1525. So from 1525, count 520, and that'll give you the next.
That's 40. 45.
Yeah, probably in our lifetime.
2045.
And
Coming up. Yeah.
When did the human sacrifices stop?
Well, the Catholic priests didn't want to see any more of that, so they were very aggressively interventional about no more sacrificing, no more throwing virgins and children into cenotes, and so they were really the cause of the stop. But there were sacrifices right up until the conquest, and in fact, probably during the early periods after the conquest, to try to reverse things. Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Good night. So